So just do that. Okay. We love to talk about candidates and policy, and we're all involved in campaigns in our group. We may and do disagree a lot, but we always refrain from personally attacking one another. I'm hoping all of us, no matter who we agree with or disagree with, can all keep that in mind, not just today, but throughout the campaign season and into the next year, at least amongst the Democrats, okay? Okay, so today, let's just talk about our agenda for today. We're gonna start with the DA Forum, where we're going to ask questions. And then after that, we're going to have our take action part of our meeting. So if you've been wanting to take action and do something, please stay for that. Okay, as far as this goes today, we've randomly selected a name for which candidate would go first with their opening statement, and that will be Ms. Mimi Rocah. And then our current district attorney, Anthony Scarpino, will go second in the opening statements. After the opening statements, we will then have questions. We've received many questions online, so I'll be asking most of those we've received. We don't know who they are from. They're issue-based. And then if we have time, we can also do more questions from the audience. Some of you have submitted questions as you came in, and I have them on a card up here. And so responses during the question and answer period will be limited to no more than 2 minutes per candidate. We're keeping time, and they will each have 5 minutes for closing statements. And for that, Mr. Scarpino will go first. Okay? All right, so let's start. I'm just going to quickly read you their bios. Anthony Scarpino is our current district attorney. He worked for many years in the FBI, and he was elected to the district attorney's office in 2016 and has been recognized as one of New York State's most progressive prosecutors. Among his many accomplishments as district attorney is a greater than 20% reduction in violent crime during his tenure, the creation of a conviction integrity unit to ensure the integrity of our criminal justice system, an emphasis on alternatives to incarceration for minor offenses, and a greater focus on serious crimes such as gun violence, sexual abuse, and corruption. Mimi Rocah is a former assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, serving from February 2001 until October 2017. From 2012 to 2017, she was the chief of the Justice Department's Westchester division under President Obama. As an AUSA, she was involved in the prosecution of organized crime, gun traffickers, corrupt public officials, narcotics traffickers, sex traffickers, and child predators. In her role as the chief of the Westchester division, Rocah also served as primary liaison with law enforcement agencies and other prosecutorial offices, such as the Westchester DA's office, and coordinated and co-chaired multi-county task forces on specific issues such as human trafficking and the opioid overdose epidemic. She has received numerous Department of Justice awards, including the 2016 Women in Federal Law Enforcement Leadership Award. Let's welcome them both with a round of applause. So now for our opening statement, Mimi, feel free. Yes, so, and the microphone just power on, and that should do it. Keep it close, yeah. It should be power on.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Up2Us for hosting this wonderful opportunity to address everyone and really talk about the issues which are so important to all of us. As many of you know, I am a 16-year federal prosecutor. It's a role that I took on because my mother, who's about to turn 90, was many years ago the victim of a violent sexual crime. She was assaulted, and the police and the prosecutor took her report and never did anything about it. She did not see justice. And as her daughter, I grew up hearing about this and hearing about her shame in the fact the system, the justice system, had failed her. So I became a prosecutor, and I worked for the Justice Department to seek justice for victims of all kinds of crimes, all kinds of violent crimes and nonviolent crimes. But I stayed a prosecutor for so long, almost 17 years, because I saw the good that someone with the right values and the right passion and the right goal to do justice and not just seek convictions could do in that role as a prosecutor. And now we're in this moment where, more than ever, people have lost faith in all of our institutions, and particularly in the criminal justice system. And I look at the DA's office here in Westchester, and I ask, can we do better? Can we do more? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Now, I think in this forum, you're going to hear two very different perspectives on a DA's office and what it should be like and what it can do. I have proposed what I think are long overdue changes to this office, changes that haven't been done by this district attorney, like creating a real conviction integrity unit, not window dressing, not labeling, but a real unit to make sure that no innocent person remains in jail. Implementing what I've put out as a 4-point plan to get more guns off the street and better protect victims of domestic violence. Improving our response to rising crimes like human trafficking and sex trafficking, where Westchester has the 5th highest rate in the state. Increasing our focus on felony internet sextings and possession of child pornography, where prosecutions of this type of crime have dropped dramatically under this DA. Responding to the increase in hate crimes, establishing groundbreaking transparency that revealed the district attorney's office's budget, racial disparities in arrests and sentencing, diversity in hiring, and implementing long overdue implicit bias training in the DA's office, which this DA has not done. I put out plans to fight corruption by refusing, which I've already started before I even take office, refuse campaign donations from people, from defense attorneys who have cases before the office, from elected officials in my jurisdiction, from police unions, and I will not accept campaign contributions from people who work in my office when I am the DA. I will make sure that the police and elected officials, the rich and the powerful, are held to the same standards as everyone else when it comes to prosecuting crimes, and I will focus on mafia infiltration of our local businesses, which harms law-abiding citizens. I propose fundamentally reshaping the Sex Crimes Bureau to better deal with online predators, the frightening rise in drug-facilitated sexual assault, to review all cold cases, to better train ADAs and police, and improve coordination of information across law enforcement. Now, my opponent says we don't need these changes. He'll tell you crime is down and so everything is fine. But Westchester actually does lag behind other counties in terms of safety on violent crime and gun crimes. I think we need a DA's office that is designed to address the modern problems that we face in our community. And like I said, I've put forth detailed plans, some of which you have copies of. And my plans are substantive policies that are developed in conjunction with advocates, with survivors, and with experts. And that's why they've been endorsed by experts like the director for the National Organization on Women and Jeffrey Deskovic, an exoneree. I hope that as we move forward, we can discuss the real policy issues instead of engaging in baseless smears as my opponent has tried to do. But above all, I hope that Westchester can be a leader, not a follower, in criminal justice reform, a leader in innovative, modern approaches to safety, and a model of ethics and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and now, Mr. Scarpino, you have 5 minutes.
Is this working?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit more than what my resume discusses. Today is actually a difficult day for me and my family. On March 1, 1968, while I was still in high school, my father passed away. And as if he was waiting, my mother passed away on March 1, 1997. Very interesting coincidence. So today I spent the morning talking to my older sisters and reminiscing about family, and I almost wish I didn't have to come here today, but we cut it short, and they were all very much understanding. So when I was growing up, I I was raised in a family of 3 older sisters. My mom used to refer to me as her surprise, since she was 42 when I was born. My sisters are 8, 10, and 12 years older than me. And my sisters were very much involved in my upbringing, especially after my dad passed away. And it was a critical time for me because I was in high school. But my mom and sisters encouraged me to give up my dreams to play for the Yankees and start focusing on my studies. I did so, changing my dream to becoming an FBI agent and going off to college and law school. I met my wife of 42 years, Lee, while serving as a summer intern in the City Court of Mount Vernon, where she had just begun working as a court reporter. Today we have 3 wonderful, nurturing, and loving daughters and 3 beautiful grandchildren. My career has been in public service, focusing on providing justice to our community. I accomplished this by my years as a FBI agent, 31 years as a trial judge, and my last 3 years as district attorney here in Westchester. When I took office, I had 2 major goals. First, making sure that Westchester remained a safe and more secure community for your family and for my family. And second, bring progressive policies to this office by not criminalizing poverty and seeking to solve issues solely by incarceration. Because I learned from my years that you can't prosecute yourself out of many of the problems we're facing in the criminal justice system. I immediately changed our bail policy. Now, I know you're all aware of the new criminal justice reform, but even before that occurred, I changed the bail policy in the office, directing my assistant district attorneys not to seek bail on any case where the office would not be seeking jail time. I felt it was just unfair to have someone sitting in jail for $250 or $500 for many months, and then at the end of the case, we would not be seeking jail time. It would only lend itself to them pleading guilty solely because they were being held in custody. I also declined to prosecute possession charges of small amounts of marijuana for personal use, which was a B misdemeanor, due to the collateral damage it was causing to segments of our community. A B misdemeanor would prevent people from getting housing, could prevent them from getting student loans, could prevent them from getting licenses to do business, getting into college. I felt the collateral damage was too much, and so I took those steps even before the state legislature did that. I supported our legislators in creation of a new criminal justice reform initiatives that just took effect on January 1. Upon entering the office, I created an immigrant affairs unit to assist our immigrant community while navigating the criminal justice system. I created a school safety commission to provide best practices and safety recommendations to prepare us all for potential school threats. And I supported diversion programs for individuals struggling with drug and mental health issues, as well as veteran courts. As for my goal, making Westchester safer, I focused our resources on violent crimes. I created a gun gang and narcotics unit, and we were able to indict over 70 major gang members. And the numbers speak for themselves. Murder is down by 33%, robbery by 51%, aggravated assault by 19%, rape by 23.6% since the time I took office. Burglary is down by almost 57%. This and more is what I've been able to accomplish in the 3 years that I've been here. So I thank you for the invitation to be here, and I look forward to trying to address your questions.
Thank you. Okay, so we've received some questions submitted online, and I think this one is the one just about everybody's ready to ask. We just want to hear your thoughts on bail reform. We will start with Ms. Rocah.
So first of all, let me say that I think bail reform was absolutely necessary. Sorry. Bail reform was absolutely necessary in New York State. I came from the federal system where we did not imprison people because they could not afford to pay their bail money. So I often, as a federal prosecutor working with the state, would really truly be shocked at people who were in jail for very minor crimes simply because they could not afford to pay bail. So that absolutely had to happen. That is a good thing. That is progress that we had the reforms. Now, The reforms just happened. They have not been in existence for very long. I do not believe in making policy based on anecdote. I believe in making policy based on real information and real data. So I do hope that we could have time to see how this actually happens. Having been a prosecutor for 16 years, I know that it's easy to get nervous as new policy comes into play, but often it doesn't play out the way we think it's going to. I do think there are some fundamental changes that will need to be addressed. I do agree that we need to have a remand option for judges. However, that must be coupled with something that has not yet been proposed, as far as I can tell, by anyone other than me, which is real bias training for the prosecutors who will be requesting the sentences, bias training for the judges, and transparency. If we're going to give judges a remand option, the option in and of itself is not discriminatory, but the implementation can be. So we need to put out real data on who is getting remanded and for what, so that if there are problems, we can address them immediately.
Okay. Mr. Scarpino?
Well, you're starting off agreeing on a lot, and I think that's positive. Obviously, I was supportive of bail reform because I took steps before the legislation came in to adjust the bail situation in Westchester to the best of my ability at that point in time. The fact of the matter is, I'm in agreement that one month is not a trend make, but at the same time, this is historic bail, this is historic criminal justice, and it may be very necessary for us to do some adjustments in. There appear to be some potential unintended consequences. I've heard Andrew Stewart Cousins is starting to feel that way. This is a critical issue for us as Democrats, because we are being pounded over the head by our Republican opponents, and they are trying to drive that truck to take control of the state Senate. So we have to take a good hard look at what we're doing. And the numbers that are coming out, although they are not, a complete trend, are disturbing, and we have to take a good look at it. And what I've been able to tell, at least from our records in this last month, burglaries in Westchester are up 110% in this 1 month. Larceny is up 26%. We're going from January of 2019 to January of 20. And robberies are up 68%. So that's the first time we've had that type, any sort of jump. It could be related to bail reform. There could be other reasons. But I've written a letter joined in that we should be, with our other progressive district attorneys, that we should be considering looking at the New Jersey program that is there, that's been up and running, has been successful, or at our other alternatives to try to do some tweaking and include certain charges as potentially being involved for seeking bail, such as home invasions, robberies, A1 and A2 narcotics felonies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another question came in. Please talk about DWI offenses, how marijuana legalization has impacted DWAI drug arrests in Colorado and elsewhere, and I guess also how you perceive, marijuana legalization is a whole big issue, and how that might come into play for you. I think people are concerned what would happen, and you can start first with this one.
Well, when I was out in Colorado recently at Utah at a district attorneys association meeting, we had people from Colorado telling us that legalization had actually changed the entire world there. There were more shops selling marijuana in cafes than there were fast food places. There are edibles, there are all sorts of other types of ways to ingest this, and they're giving serious consideration to the nature of how it's impacted and changed life there. We do not have the capability at this time to really determine whether a person is driving under the influence of marijuana. It is something that is concerning us and how we're going to protect our roads. And so this is something that we have to take a hard look at. It's clearly something the legislature should be looking very closely at if they decide to change the entire universe by legalizing marijuana. I know they claim they're going to make a lot of money. I do not believe that legalizing is going to dry up the illegal market, because they're going to be taxed to the top, and people are going to be seeking other alternatives of getting the marijuana. So it's a very complex issue that I think the state legislature has to really delve into, take a look at how successful and how it's changed the life of people out in Colorado.
Ms. Rocah?
So, look, the decision of whether to legalize marijuana is going to be up to the legislator, not up to whoever's the district attorney. We already have made significant changes here by legalizing small amounts of marijuana, which I think was absolutely a good step forward. One thing we have to look at, though, that we haven't discussed is with marijuana being legalized in small amounts, what about the people who have been convicted of it in the past? The reason that we've legalized it is because it so negatively impacts people's lives going forward. If you have convictions for marijuana possession, you can't apply for jobs. You may not be eligible for certain government benefits. You may not be able to get into schools. Well, what about people who were already convicted of it before? Now, I know that the answer the current district attorney gives as well, it gets automatically expunged under the new law. I don't personally trust my government to automatically do anything, so as district attorney, I would set up a system where people can come and make sure that they've been expunged, and I would do significant outreach to the communities that this most impacts, because having the expungement does no good if people don't know about it. They're still not gonna apply for jobs. So we need to do outreach and make sure that that happens and that people know about the expungements.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question says, please speak about implicit bias in all areas of the criminal justice system, its impact, and what can be done to address this seemingly impervious problem. Ms. Rocah, we'll start with you.
So this is really important. I alluded to this, I think, in my first answer. Laws generally, not all, but generally, are not discriminatory. People are, and implementation and practice can be discriminatory. And first and foremost, I think we as prosecutors, it's incumbent on us to acknowledge that we have biases, because until we acknowledge that, we can't fix it. And prosecutors wield enormous power on a day-to-day basis, not just the head, not just the DA, but the person every day, the 30-year-old person, the line assistant, whether it be a federal or state prosecutor, the ones who are out there negotiating plea agreements, asking for certain sentences, deciding whether to ask for bail or not. We need to train those people vigorously on biases, both in terms of race and in terms of gender, because it greatly also affects the prosecution of sex crimes. So that would be a very top priority for me.
Okay, Mr. Scarpino.
So yes, there is implicit bias. We're always worried about it. We've tried to take steps in everything we do. When I came into the office, instead of having one person evaluating people that were applying for positions, I created a committee that had all different types of people on it, all races, to ensure that we didn't have this type of implicit bias that might exist in preventing people from coming in and applying for or getting a job here in Westchester. We are doing training on implicit bias. It's something that we've trained our managers on it. We've contracted to try to do it for all of our assistant district attorneys. The county also does that when people are involved in their hiring. And I think it's very important that the judges, of course, also be trained on it. So it's something that we are all alerting to and waking up to. And this is something that we have to focus on.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to take 1 minute to say thank you so much for keeping within the time limits, because we are just getting through the questions, and I really appreciate it. It's so different from the debate we saw last week. Okay, so the next question, Mr. Scarpino, I believe we start with you. If you could, would you change mandatory minimum sentencing mandates, and if yes, how?
So we have the mandatory minimum sentencing is something that was created by the state legislature, obviously. I think that it is important for judges that have, people don't want judges to have discretion on bail, but I think it's important that judges have discretion on sentencing. I've always been a big fan of that. And so, because every individual has different reasons for what they've done, we learn different things about them, we have to handle cases on a case-by-case basis. So I'm supportive of having judges having the ability to have a range of sentences and being able to divert from those based upon unusual circumstances that they think are appropriate. Because we have to, the world of law enforcement and judges and prosecution is very different than in the old days. The old days, it was, under Rockefeller laws, it was incarceration was the answer for everything. Mandatory minimum sentences. We've thrown that out because we realized that it was not working, and now we have to take a look at these sentences on an individual basis, based upon the individual probation report, and what we can do to ensure that they try to return to society in a positive way.
Ms. Rocah?
So again, like with marijuana, this would be a decision that's ultimately up to the legislator, not up to the district attorney. But it is doing away with many of the mandatory minimums, not all, is something I would support. And I've actually lived through this because as a federal prosecutor, there are quite a few mandatory minimums, but we also had mandatory sentencing guidelines that operated like mandatory minimums, and those were done away with several years ago. And a lot of people thought, the sky would fall when that happened. But instead what happened is judges ended up still sentencing well within what the recommended guideline range. We did not have a huge increase in disparity. And the reason that mandatory minimums are so hard for people who are charged is they can be used as real leverage by prosecutors to essentially coerce pleas where there might not otherwise be one. So this is part of the bigger criminal justice reform approach with broader discovery of making the system more fair for the people who are charged in it so that they are not forced into early plea negotiations in order to avoid high sentences. So we need to couple this discussion with a plan for requiring prosecutors to not put time limits on certain kinds of plea offers, because that discourages defense attorneys from really being able to take the time to look at the evidence. And I always say that discovery in the hands of a defense attorney is not only more fair for the defense, it's actually a prosecutor's best friend, because it helps you identify the problems in your cases and focus on the cases that are the stronger ones that you should really be spending your time and resources on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question we received online was, do you think the White Plains Police Department in the Chamberlain case was investigated fully and it was proper that no charges be brought? And then it also says, what does this do for the public confidence in the district attorney's office investigating allegations of crimes perpetrated by police when the office works so closely with the police departments? How does one manage that in a district attorney role? And I believe you start, yes?
Broad question to answer in a short time.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say on this. Let me start by saying that I just went the other day to see the new film about the shooting of Kenneth Chamberlain. I was invited by Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., who is supporting my candidacy. And I have spoken with him about this issue. This is an enormously important and difficult issue. It's difficult because we do put district attorneys who work with police every day in charge of also prosecuting, investigating, and policing the law enforcement. I have done that. As a federal prosecutor, I've been involved in the prosecution of federal agents with whom we worked. I believe that most law enforcement is good law enforcement, and when someone does something wrong, other law enforcement wants us to pursue that as prosecutors, because it makes good law enforcement's job harder. It makes all of our jobs harder. It erodes trust of the community. Now, I will make that clear from day one, that I will not treat investigations of police officers, whether it be shootings, misconduct, corruption, I will not treat that any differently than investigations of anyone else. I believe, again, transparency is very important here. If we are going to be making decisions that some people in the community on any side of the issue will not like, will not be happy with, will have understandably emotional reactions to, we need to make the evidence on which those decisions are based much more public, because otherwise people cannot have faith in the decisions.
Mr. Scarpino?
So I feel uncomfortable talking about the Chamberlain case. I was not involved in it. I know that it was investigated under the Chief Judge's office, Chief Judge Janet T. Fiore. Determinations that were made there by grand juries. And to me, I can't say whether I think that there was an error there made or not. I just don't feel qualified to say that, because I've not investigated it on my own, because it was not my responsibility to do so. I am concerned, and we are always concerned about law enforcement or any person in power who takes advantage or does something improper. Right now, this office, my office, is involved in prosecuting several individuals, law enforcement officers for crimes. That's the nature of the beast when we deal with law enforcement. They, district attorneys, if you watch Law and Order, you know, district attorneys and as prosecutors and police departments, sometimes they're working together because they're partners in certain matters, and other times we are on opposite ends. Right now, whenever I'm investigating or prosecuting a police officer, we're on the opposite end sometimes. And that's the nature of what we do, and that's our responsibility, because we have to seek justice for everyone. And so it's important. I think that the bulk of our law enforcement officers are working hard every day, but if there is someone that transgresses, it's our responsibility to take that bad apple and prosecute them and take them out of the system because they run forever.
Okay, thank you.